Hello and welcome to Bleav in Celtics. I'm your host, Zach LeBlanc, Celtics insider for Bleav and a longtime Boston Celtics fan, here to bring you everything you need to know about the team. On today's show, a quick recap of the NBA All-Star Weekend, what I'm watching for from the Boston Celtics over the last 28 games of the season, and a preview of the Celtics vs. Warriors on Thursday night on Amazon Prime. This is Bleav in Celtics. I'm your host, Zach LeBlanc. Kicking things off here, the NBA All-Star Weekend recap. The game itself was a huge success, and I'm not the only one that feels that way. This was, in my opinion, the best All-Star game I've watched since 2020, the All-Star game in Chicago, which was the first year where they had the point set mark where you had to score 24 points in the fourth quarter. That game, you had Kyle Lowry taking charges and went down to the final shot, which unfortunately ended on a free throw. Such an anticlimactic way to end what was honestly one of the best All-Star games in recent memory. The new format, 3 teams, Adam Silver, I got to give him credit to it. He cooked with this one. Team World, Team Stars, and Team Stripes all delivered a great product for the round-robin tournament. Each team plays each other once. The best two records, go on to the finals. And point differential and total points scored will sort of sort that out depending on how things go. But I have to give a big shout out to Victor Wembanyama, talking about how he wants to bring the All-Star game back. And he set the tone early, first possession of the game right off the tip, and immediately goes up with the dunk. And then on top of that, Anthony Edwards, credit to him as well for sort of picking up where Wemby started. Ant himself, the All-Star Game MVP, poured in 32 points. But Ant, after the game, said this, I ain't going to lie, Wemby set the tone. He came out hard, and we had to follow that. We had to pick it up, and we did it. Anthony Edwards, he had a awesome All-Star game, and I think a big part of that was, of course, that effort factor that he brought in. Him, Wemby, guys like that, and we'll talk about it more, but the effort was there. And it wasn't just me who enjoyed this All-Star game. Like I said, the consensus, it seems like, was great, whether it's former players, the media members, a lot of the players themselves seem to have enjoyed it. And NBA Communications today put out this post that the 2026 All-Star Game was the most watched NBA All-Star Game since 2011, averaging 8.8 million viewers. This is 15 years later, and finally the most watched All-Star Game since then. So I mean, the All-Star Game, it seems like it is finally back. The new format, a lot of talk about whether to go back to East versus West, but I will say I think that Team World, putting in a little bit of that, the 3 different teams, the Team World versus USA, splitting up the All-Stars, I think was a tremendous job. I think it was a great job by Adam Silver and the rest of the league to finally bring the All-Star Game back. And the games were awesome outside of that championship game, which was a blowout. I think the brand of basketball played was terrific. The Stars vs. Stripes game, the first one that they played that wasn't the championship, the ending in that game was amazing. I talk about Anthony Edwards. He was on Team Stars, the Team Stripes up 39-30, and Anthony Edwards really took over that game to eventually give them a 1-point lead. He had a steal and then in transition, pull up 3 to give them a 1-point lead. And then on top of that, big game, big All-Star game possession. LeBron, 10 seconds left, finds Donovan Mitchell on the cut, and then he hooks the pass over, incredible pass by Donovan Mitchell, to the corner that he just cut from to De'Aaron Fox, the 2023 Clutch Player of the Year, with the pump fake sidestep 3 to knock down the buzzer beater. I don't know if I've ever stood up like that at a buzzer beater in a game for the All-Star game, because that was just so awesome to finally see some form of effort, and the players really played it off. Like I said, ball movement was there, and guys were trying on defense, guarding one-on-one. The game finally wasn't just an in-game dunk contest. It wasn't just an alley-oop contest. Guys pulling up from 3. No one's getting back in transition. Guys were finally trying, and it was refreshing to see. I talked about Wemby. Team World lost their first game. They had a defensive miscommunication. Scotty Barnes ended up knocking down the game winner from 3. And Wemby was visibly upset that they lost that game. And it was so good to finally see someone care about the All-Star game. So so much credit to Wemby, especially a guy that is a potential future face of the NBA. Everybody knows him. He's on an absolute tear. To see him really set the tone and then these other guys follow, I think was amazing. And not only that, but like I said, the 3 different teams, the way that they organized them, I think was terrific. Team World, all those international players. Then you have the 2 USA teams making up the other ones. So Team Stars, of course, Anthony Edwards, a lot of those younger guys. Jalen Johnson was on there, Chet Holmgren, those younger guys, and Devin Booker kind of got pulled in there with them. But then team stripes, on the other hand, LeBron, Kevin Durant, the older players, Jaylen Brown, of course, on that team, Steph Curry, who didn't play, would have been on that team. And so I think the three dynamics between the teams made it also interesting to watch just heading in, because not only did I think that the teams were balanced in a sense, but it was also, like I said, they all kind of had that different dynamic where there's the international guys, the young guys, the older guys. And our guy, Jaylen Brown, of course, on that team stripes, I got to talk about him. Started out that first game hot. He had 11 points in that one, threw down some powerful dunks, working in the mid-range game, sidestep three, doing the stuff that he's been doing all year, scoring at a 3-level threat, but struggled for the rest of the night, led team stripes and shot attempts in the championship game, and was just 2 for 10, but granted the entire team went cold. So I don't blame Jaylen Brown for that one. They had to play 3 straight games, so if that would be my only knock, is that it is kind of interesting because Team Stripes, who played in the second and the third game and then had the championship game, is 3 straight games. So I mean, I think that would be the only thing that could maybe be changed, but I don't know how they change that. And the players didn't really say anything about that, so it is kind of interesting, I guess. But ultimately, interesting night for Jaylen Brown. I thought he was going to go really get that MVP at first, but then the second game, Kawhi taking over. He had 31 points in just 12 minutes in that one, and he was hitting some tough shots because guys were finally playing defense. He had to go deep into his bag to score some of those classic Kawhi tweens. He was working on Pascal Siakam a lot, his former teammate. LeBron with a crazy putback dunk. The guys were finally trying. And like I said, guys like Kawhi, LeBron, who are older in their careers, haven't played as much, but still putting in the effort in a game that doesn't necessarily matter as much when it comes to the season, is so refreshing and good to see. And so I'm glad that the players were finally committed into this one. Now, my concern outside of the game, the weekend itself did not have a large attendance Friday and Saturday night. I can understand why. The popularity of the celebrity game and the challenges aren't the biggest. I do think the star power plays a big factor too. The dunk contest, for example, hasn't had the star power that it's had for a long time. The 3-point contest, no Steph this year, will definitely do that. Although Damian Lillard hasn't played a game this year, came out and won it. I guess credit to him. I mean, terrific job coming off that Achilles injury. Still yet to play a single game this year, and it definitely will not. He's not coming back until next year. But just shows up and wins the 3-point contest. That's the type of player that he is. And then the celebrity game, again, not much interest, but if you're into that kind of stuff, you're definitely into it. I think the celebrity game's always been kind of interesting. Like Taco Fall was there this year. He had a classic 2020. Jeremy Lin was there. Some big names always in the celebrity game. But Intuit Dome, the brand new venue, was not necessarily packed. I think by the time the actual game rolled around, specifically on Sunday night, still not much attendance there. And I think a big part of the game was the interesting tip-off time, 2 p.m. out in the West Coast. So me personally in the East Coast, I'm always used to the All-Star game tipping off at around 8 p.m. That 5 p.m. time being really threw me off. I mean, by 4 p.m., I didn't know until about 4 p.m. on the East Coast that is when the game was tipping off. So interesting time that might have contributed to some of that attendance. But the fact, too, it being at the nice new Intuit Dome, that stadium's awesome. The Clippers had the wall there. Of course, all their theatrics with the light-up chairs and whatnot, I think was amazing to see. So it hurt that there wasn't a lot of fans there to experience it. But like I said, the NBA, I think, ultimately it was well perceived. 8.8 million views, the most views of an All-Star game since 2011. So hopefully now, with how great this game was this year, it will set the precedent in the future that we're going to get more attendance next year. Because the game, I don't blame fans for not going with the product that was there the past couple of years. But hopefully, with how things turned out, the next couple of years will be great for the All-Star game. And I think the All-Star game is back. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but outside of the championship game, those first 3 games were amazing to watch. So hopefully I'm praying the All-Star game is back, because when the All-Star game's good, it's such a fun break in the season, and to see the players come out and try, I think it was amazing. Of course, moving on, got to talk about our Boston Celtics here, entering the All-Star break as the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, sitting out 35-19. And here's what I'm looking for at the Celtics as the last 28 games of the season. They have the 5th hardest remaining schedule in the NBA. That's the second in the East. The only team with a harder schedule is the Chicago Bulls, who, of course, are on the downside, going downwards in the East. You still have to play the defending champions OKC twice. You got to play the Spurs once. You have one matchup left with the Knicks and Cleveland, so half-game lead on the Knicks. Meanwhile, Cleveland back in the hunt, just a game and a half behind you with James Harden surging there. That offense is finally back to really the caliber that it was last year. So there is a strong race for the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. And from the Celtics perspective, having home court advantage is going to be important, as it is any year. But compared to especially the last 2 years, and specifically last year where they were the 2 seed, you didn't have really any worry about the standings because they came off the championship run. You knew that they had the talent to really overcome anything. So there was no concern about, whether they caught up to Cleveland or not to take the 1 seed. I would have taken them in any matchup, of course. But now, from a talent perspective, you will take anything that you can get, especially considering the fact that I think the Knicks and the Cavs are both more talented than you without Jayson Tatum on the floor, on paper at least. Now, do they play better than you? We'll have to see. I think the Knicks, of course, definitely a down year for that. I mean, they're still playing good, don't get me wrong, 35-20 in the 3rd seed in the East. But like I said, they were expected to be this was supposed to be their year. They were supposed to be at least the 1st team in the East. Same thing with the Cavs. They were also supposed to really have a stronghold on that 1 seed in the East. And now 2 of them are behind you in the standings without Jayson Tatum. So from a Celtics perspective, you have less talent than the last 2 years. Jayson Tatum, you obviously still don't know whether he's going to come back, and we will touch on that. But you will take anything, especially those first 2 home games, because I think Detroit has really run away with the conference here. They are still my favorites to come out of the East. Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren are putting on a fantastic season. And even some of those role-playing guys, Isaiah Stewart, who, of course, suspended for a little bit here, but he's having a terrific year off the bench, easily the best year of his career for him. So the Celtics' home court advantage is the big thing that I'm looking for, really locking up that 2 seed. We'll have to see if they can do it. Now, the second thing that I'm looking here is Nikola Vucevic and his continued integration to the Celtics, because the one word that I would have to describe it so far has been seamless. 3 games played. We're going to ignore that Knicks game before the All-Star break because that one, nobody on the team played well, but 2 double-doubles off the bench, and my biggest love of his game so far has been the playmaking ability. I think at times he's been a little too unselfish. His ability to read the floor has been just what I've loved about him. And as a guy who's 16th in the league in active players in terms of games played, 1,023 games, of course he's going to know how to read the game, but it's refreshing to finally get back the ability to play through your bigs. Losing Kristaps Porzingis, losing Al Horford, it took away that ability because not only can the 2 of them score, so it draws the defensive attention, but they are also extremely good passers. So you haven't had that dynamic in your offense. You get Vooch, you have that dynamic back in your offense, a guy that can not only post up, space the floor, but make the right read, make the right pass. And that is a huge thing that the Celtics need because they've been so guard-oriented this year. It's something that they've lacked on their roster. The first game against Miami, I think the late game drive to Derek White, when he kicked it to him in the corner to give the Celtics the lead with a minute and 30 left, really encapsulates what Vooch kind of brings to the table there. And then on top of that, the Chicago game, finding Jordan Walsh on multiple cuts, some really pinpoint slicing passes there in the sequence where Vooch found Walsh on the cut. Walsh kicks it to Hugo in the corner, back to White on the wing, and then right back to where it started for Vooch to knock down the top of the key 3 is a perfect sequence to show what he brings to this team. Having that ability of a guy who can sort of do everything. He's 35 years old, a free agent set to be next year, but a guy that I think off the bench makes the most sense, not disrupting the Neemias Queta, who's been such a good player so far for the season. Obviously, the advanced stats will tell you so. But I think there's some moments still where Vooch needs to be aggressive, and we're sort of in that honeymoon phase with him here. He was so happy to be here finally on a team that is contending, has a winning record, getting out of Chicago, but he needs to be more aggressive at some points because he is that talented of a player. He's showing the willingness to pass, but like I said, the talent is there with him. We've seen it. We know the type of scorer he is. He's still averaging at 17 points per game this year. So interesting to see how he continues to integrate himself into this team. The passing has been there, but I would like him to be a little bit more aggressive. And we saw that in the Chicago game, 4 for 5 from 3, demonstrating a little bit of that post-up ability, something they've lacked all year. Now, we can't talk about the last 28 games, of course, without mentioning Jayson Tatum. NBC, a huge announcement coming from them, dropping a trailer for a documentary about Jayson Tatum in his rehab from the Achilles injury titled The Quiet Work. Per NBC Sports description of the documentary, the 5-part docuseries, The Quiet Work, follows Jayson Tatum through the most challenging stretch of his career as he fights to return to the NBA. From the locker room to the hospital room, through rehab and recovery, and ultimately back to the court, this is the unseen side of his journey and the work no one ever witnesses until now. Now, Brad Stevens had some comments before the All-Star break. Of course, Tatum practiced with the main Celtics. Brad saying when Tatum is 100%, Tatum and his group will sit down as to make the final decision. So ultimately, it doesn't necessarily matter whether the Celtics, I'm sure they obviously are playing a huge part of this, but it is going to come down to Jayson Tatum himself and his longtime trainer, Nick, saying to make that final decision. And I've always been stuck on the idea that if Jayson Tatum is 100%, not 99%, not 99.9%, if he is 100%, it is more beneficial for him to come back this season because there's no point, like I said, only if he's 100%, there's no point for him to delay him coming back when the Celtics next year are going to go all in. We know what they're going to do. Of course, trying to stay under the luxury tax to avoid that repeater tax. They still have to assign someone to the active roster, so we'll see what they do just to stay under that luxury tax. But the Celtics are going to reload next year. They're going to compete. They're going to go all in as they do every year, and they've had a good year this year. So Tatum, him coming back to potentially, even if it's just 15 games to end the year here, it's enough to shake off the rust for him to get some real game action, stuff that you can't recreate in practice, stuff that you can't recreate in 5-on-5 against the main Celtics, stuff that you just simply cannot recreate NBA conditioning without actually being on the court. So for him to shake off that rust, no matter how much he plays, it is so important for his rehab. So that way, when he walks into next season, Jayson Tatum is Jayson Tatum. It's going to take time regardless. And I think a big part of this is when does he come back? I am eyeing definitely that first to second week of March if he's going to come back. I think anything later kind of rules him out because there's only a certain amount of time. Like I said, he has to condition back up. And you can't just, it's not like he can play the last 2 weeks of the season and then just go straight into playoff basketball. It's a different animal. He has to ramp up. Expect him to come off the bench 15 to 20 minutes to start things off, minute restrictions, and they're going to slowly ramp him up as the playoffs start. And this is, like I said, this is still all hypothetical. We don't know if he's coming back. But my point is, why is NBC airing this documentary if Jayson Tatum is not going to play? And on top of that, NBC had the Celtics game on March 1st move from just the regional NBC Sports Boston game to NBC on primetime against the Sixers on March 1st. That's basically, that's less than 2 weeks away now. So I don't know if that is ambitious. We just saw Tatum practicing against 5-on-5, but it's still such a long road to recovery that we don't know where he's at. But why would NBC air this if he's not going to play this season? I think that plays a big part in it. Does NBC know something that we don't? I don't know. I personally don't know. But for NBC to air this and Jayson Tatum to not come back at the end of it, I think doesn't make sense for them. It would make sense if this was over the summer that they were, and I still don't know if we have the full timeline of this docuseries because they said this is coming out. This is something that they're releasing over the next couple of weeks. So it would make sense if Tatum was coming back, let's say next season, for them to do this, right at training camp, right before opening night. Now we're doing this now right before a potential return, I think is interesting. And lastly, on top of that, the last thing that I'm looking for from these last 28 games is how did the Celtics establish their playoff rotation? Tatum coming back is going to be a big factor in that. You're going to have to give up a little bit of the shots, some of that playing time, but the Celtics need that help. I think a big part of that is Pritchard coming off the bench. I think Tatum inserting back into that starting lineup eventually will allow Pritchard really to settle in finally to that bench role. He's played a couple games off the bench since the Celtics traded away Anthony Simons because they needed that guard play off the bench, and he's been terrific back in his role. And not that he wasn't terrific as a starter this year, but he just fits in so seamlessly there. And so Tatum coming back is going to alleviate a lot of the pressure off some of these other guys, the Baylor Shiremans, the Jordan Walsh, the Hugo Gonzalez. All three of those guys kind of fit into the same category where these plug-and-play guys that can be inserted in the starting lineup. But if Tatum's back, you can kind of take some of those pressure off those guys. And I think with Nikola Vucevic, their big man rotations kind of solidify Garza, despite, I think, what an incredible run he's had so far this season, taking definitely a step back with Vucevic, just the overall better player. But don't let that take away. I think Garza's got a good future ahead of him and a chance definitely for him to still carve out some minutes here. But I think Keita and Vucevic is really the two center rotation that they're going to go with for the rest of the year. And so we'll have to see. But the Celtics getting Tatum back is gonna change up how their rotations are. It's something that you're gonna have to monitor because you're trying to integrate. It's not like he's coming back and he's only playing 20 minutes a night. He's gonna play 20 minutes a night at first, but he's gonna have to integrate. He's gonna bump up. So everyone's gonna have to learn how to play with him again. And I'm not worried about it, especially a guy like Jaylen Brown. They've played together for 8 years now. They know how to play. But at this point in the season, these guys have played 54 games together. So you're gonna have to figure it out regardless. Now, to close out the show today, let's talk a little bit about the Celtics coming out of the All-Star break with a 4-game road stand. Like I said, this is the 5th hardest schedule in the NBA, and this is a strong example of why. Starting things off, that 4-game road stand at the Golden State Warriors Thursday night on Amazon Prime. You get the Lakers after that. The Phoenix Suns, one of the big surprise teams of the year. Dillon Brooks having himself a career year. Devin Booker, of course, playing as usual. And when they've got Jalen Green in the lineup, he's actually been pretty solid this year. So even them, they're no knock. And the Denver Nuggets, of course, to finish things out, Jokic integrating himself back into the lineup after that knee injury in December. The first 4 games out of the All-Star break under Joe Mazzulla, 3-1, 4-0, and 3-1. So Celtics, I think 3-1 is definitely what they're aiming for on this stretch. I'll talk a little bit about that Golden State game because one of the big things I enjoyed about Brad Stevens when he was the head coach of this team is that the Celtics were always prepared at the All-Star break. They always started off that last third of the season strong, and it's very important, like I mentioned, that tightly contested race for the 2 seed. It's going to be big to create a little bit of space here if they can. So a 3-1 stretch is 100% doable, 100% possible. And it starts with getting a win Thursday at Golden State because a big opportunity to be had. Steph Curry and Kristaps Porzingis still questionable for this matchup. Steve Kerr said this last week on February 8th. We'll hopefully get Steph and Kristaps back, or we'll hopefully get Steph and Kristaps playing right after the All-Star break. Seems definitely he's a little bit more optimistic that Steph will be back for this game. He did not play Sunday during the All-Star game, and Kristaps a little bit more murky with him, of course, with that illness. And then as Celtics fans, we know very much about that. And then the Achilles injury he's been dealing with this year. Definitely no joke with those Achilles injuries. So Porzingis would be a huge get for the Warriors if he is healthy. As Celtics fans, we know this. The versatility that he brings to the floor, the pick and pop with Steph, I think is going to be amazing. Something definitely to watch for if the two of them suit up for the Warriors in this one. The versatility that he brings, he's 7-1, but at the same time can post up. Even though he doesn't have the biggest frame, but he can shoot over guys. He still has some of that strength, and he can shoot from anywhere. So that's a big pickup for the Warriors. Still, I think KP is the perfect third guy in your team. You need a second guy, as we saw here at Boston before him, but he is the perfect third option. It's just so much questions around him of how available is he going to be. And so we will have to see. I'm excited for the Celtics game Thursday. Some great matchups between the Celtics and the Warriors over the last decade. Of course, that 2022 finals, but even over the past 5 years, plenty of games going into overtime, a good rivalry between these teams. And you want to see Steph play because his performances against the Celtics this year, his performance against the Celtics over the past few years have been amazing. So just from a fan perspective, but definitely a winnable game for the Celtics. And I think a great chance to build some momentum against a quality opponent out of the All-Star break. I will be back on Friday to recap that episode. That's going to do it for today's episode of Bleav in Celtics. Once again, be back Friday to recap that game and also preview the rest of the Celtics road trip as Boston heads into the big stretch of the season. Make sure to follow, download, and share so you don't miss an episode. I'm Zach LeBlanc. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next time.